The entire world is swimming in debt. As of early 2026, the total global debt, that's all governments, companies, and families combined, has hit a huge record of nearly $353 trillion. To give you an idea of how big that is, the United States, the world's biggest economy, has a national debt of over $39 trillion all by itself. This leads to a simple question that sounds like a riddle. If almost every country is in debt, who did we borrow all this money from? Did we get a loan from Mars? The answer is more shocking than you might think, and it's a secret that's hiding in plain sight. We owe it all to ourselves. It's an idea that feels like it doesn't make sense. How can everyone owe money at the same time? It's like going to dinner with friends, but every single person forgot their wallet and needs someone else to pay for them. Logically, it just doesn't seem to add up. We are always hearing that countries are borrowing money too quickly. The U.S. national debt, for instance, has been growing by over $2 trillion a year. At the same time, other big economies are also deep in debt. Japan's government owes more than 2.5 times the amount of money its whole economy makes in a year. In Europe, countries like Italy and Greece are known for their high debt. It's happening all over the world. From the most powerful countries to the smallest developing ones, almost everyone is a borrower. This makes us look for a lender, a secret global bank, a hidden group of billionaires. The truth is both simpler and more complicated. To understand it, we first have to get rid of the biggest myth about all this debt. There is no single they that the world owes money to. The system is a closed circle. So if it's not one single group, who holds the trillions in IOUs? The answer is a wide range of lenders, and the single biggest lender to a country is almost always itself. When a government needs to borrow money, it doesn't just call a bank for a loan. Instead, it sells something called a government bond. Think of a government bond as a special IOU. You, or a company, can buy a bond for, say, $1,000. You've just loaned the government $1,000. In return, the government promises to pay you back the money you first paid at a later date, and on the way, it pays you regular interest. These bonds are bought by a huge mix of people and groups, and when you look at who owns them, the picture of who countries owe money to becomes surprisingly clear. The lenders are in three main groups: lenders from inside the country, lenders from other countries, and international groups. Let's start with the biggest group, domestic lenders. These are the citizens and groups within a country. For the United States, most of its over $39 trillion debt is held right at home. The owners include regular American citizens, private companies, and banks. But the two biggest owners inside the country are a surprise to many. The first is the U.S. Federal Reserve, America's central bank, which holds about $4.5 trillion in U.S. debt to help manage the country's money and interest rates. The second largest owner inside the country is the U.S. government itself. This sounds like a trick, but it's real. Around $7.6 trillion of the debt is held by the government. This means one part of the government owes money to another. Most of this is in special savings, like the Social Security Trust Fund. Basically, these funds have collected more money over the years than they've paid out, and they invest that extra money in government bonds as a safe way to store it for people who will retire in the future. So, the U.S. government owes trillions of dollars to its own future retirees. This isn't just a U.S. thing. In Japan, which has one of the highest amounts of debt compared to its economy in the world at over 250%, the situation is even more extreme. Almost all of the Japanese government's debt is owed to its own citizens, and, most importantly, its own central bank, the Bank of Japan. This is a key reason Japan can handle such high debt without collapsing. It's a debt the country largely owes to itself in its own money, supported by the savings of its own people, and very low interest rates. Next, we have foreign lenders. This is where you hear stories about countries like China owning America, but the truth is more complicated. Foreign governments and investors own about a third of U.S. public debt. The largest foreign holder isn't China, it's Japan, holding over $1.1 trillion in US bonds. The UK and China are next. But why do other countries buy US debt? They aren't doing it to get power over the US. They do it because US government bonds are seen as one of the safest investments in the world. If you're a country with a lot of cash, you need a safe place to put that money and earn a little interest. US bonds are that safe place. Finally, for developing nations or countries in a big crisis, there are the global helpers, groups like the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank. These groups act as lenders when no one else will, giving loans to help countries fix their economies or pay for big projects. Their lending power comes from their 190 member countries. So the idea of one country controlling another with debt is mostly a myth. It's a complex system where the biggest lenders are often ourselves. Understanding this system is key to understanding how money works today. If you're finding this helpful, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our next video on how the world really works. Knowing who the money is owed to is one thing, but why do governments borrow so much? It's not just because they're bad with money. Borrowing is a key tool in modern economics. There are four main reasons. First, to pay the bills. Just like a family, a government has income, mostly from taxes, and expenses, public services, military, salaries. Often the expenses are higher than the income. This gap is called a budget deficit. To fill that gap and keep services running, the government borrows. Second, to pay for long-term projects. Think about huge projects like high-speed rail, green energy systems, or new hospitals and schools. These projects cost a fortune and take a long time to pay for themselves. Instead of saving for 50 years, governments borrow the money to build them now. The idea is that these projects will help the economy, create jobs, and bring in more tax money in the future, which helps pay back the loan. It's like getting a loan to buy a house. You borrow a large amount to get something of value that will hopefully be worth more later. Third, to handle crises. When an unexpected disaster happens, a pandemic, a huge hurricane, or a war, governments need a lot of cash right away. Tax money isn't enough to handle these rare, unexpected events. During the COVID-19 pandemic, for example, governments all over the world borrowed trillions for emergency health and healthcare. And fourth, to pay off old debt. This is where things can get tricky. Government bonds have an end date. When a bond is due, the government has to pay the owner back. Very often, they do this by selling new bonds to get the cash to pay off the old ones. This is called rolling over the debt. As long as the economy is growing and people are willing to buy the new bonds, this can keep going forever. This is how the system is designed to work. So if debt can just be rolled over forever, is it even a problem? Is the $353 trillion global debt number just meaningless? The answer is that debt is a tool with two sides. When used to pay for things that help the economy grow, it's a powerful way to create success. But when it grows much faster than the economy that has to support it, it becomes a real danger. To measure this risk, economists use the debt to GDP ratio. This compares a country's total government debt to its gross domestic product, the total value of all goods and services made in a year. A lower number is usually seen as safer. For a long time, a debt-to-GDP ratio below 60% was seen as a safe level, a number made famous by a rule for countries in the European Union. Today, many major economies are far above that. The US ratio for its total national debt is over 120%. Japan's is over 250%. So why haven't they collapsed? It comes back to who they owe the money to and in what money. Since both the US and Japan owe most of their debt in their own money to their own people and groups, they can't go bankrupt in the same way a person can. In theory, they can always create more money to pay the debt. The real risk isn't going bankrupt, but rather prices rising out of control, their money becoming less valuable, and high interest rates that stop the economy from growing. The real danger is for countries that borrow a lot of money in a foreign currency, like US dollars. If their own currency gets weaker, their debt gets much bigger and harder to repay. This can lead to a country being unable to pay its debts and a total economic collapse, as we've seen in countries like Argentina and Sri Lanka. So we come back to our riddle. How can every country be in debt? The answer is that the world's financial system is built on a circle of lending and borrowing. Governments borrow money by selling bonds, which are bought by their own citizens, their own central banks, pension funds, and foreign countries looking for a safe investment. This system had a key moment in its history in the late 1600s when the Bank of England was created to lend money to the government to pay for a war. That event helped make the idea of national debt and modern government finance official. What was true then is still true today. Debt is a part of our economic system, not a mistake. It's a tool that lets governments plan for the future and handle crises. The world owes money to itself. You, through your pension or bank account, are probably lending money to your own government and others. The real question isn't if we can get to zero debt. We can't, and we probably wouldn't want to. The real question is if we can use this powerful tool wisely to create economies that grow faster than their debts, making sure that this mountain of debt remains a base for success, not the cause of a collapse.